Live to Peter Dutton speaking now. We'll come back to you in a moment.
Call a national cabinet very early on after the October 7 attacks and after what we saw on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. He chose not to do that. Yesterday, he convenes a national cabinet meeting after saying that one wasn't necessary just 24 hours before that. And there was nothing substantive that was delivered out of that national cabinet meeting. That's exactly the purpose of the national cabinet meeting. We know the Tasmanian government pushed for mandatory sentencing for terrorist offences. We know that there was discussion, obviously, and Premier Minns has been at odds with the Prime Minister on this issue for some time. So there was a broader discussion, but in the end, the only thing the Prime Minister could deliver was better record keeping. And I just don't think that provides any comfort to those people living in areas of our country where they feel that they can't do so safely. We don't have a situation in our culture, and we shouldn't allow it to gather pace where one segment of the Australian people can be treated differently to others. And I believe very strongly that the Prime Minister had an opportunity to stand up to provide the leadership that our country desperately needs during the period of a national crisis, and just hasn't done that. In relation to the second issue, cost of living, as you know, is a huge issue. Everywhere you go, as we move across the country, talking to a small business owner this morning, input costs around electricity continue to go up, and the government's renewables only policy means that power prices will keep going up. And the government has a 2035 target, but they don't want to tell Australians about it before the election. Why? If it's good for the country, why not provide the information about how much power bills will go up under the Albanese government if they're re-elected and they sign up to that target? So I just think the Prime Minister needs to provide that detail, and so far he's not done that, and Australians can expect their power prices to go up even further under a Prime Minister who promised a $275 cut to power prices, and instead they've gone up by $1,000. Happy to take any questions.
It seems that the AFP suggestion is that some of these people are doing this for money, not ideology. What's your view on that?
Well, Mark, again, I just think the Prime Minister needs to be honest here, because it seems that he's at odds with the Australian Federal Police Commissioner. If there has been such a significant international element, what has been the involvement of the federal agencies, including ASIO, and for how long? And why has the Prime Minister never mentioned this before now? When did the Prime Minister find out that there were foreign players? Are these state actors, or are they organised crime groups, or are they anti-Semitic groups? What did the Prime Minister know? And frankly, it just shines a spotlight on the fact that the Commonwealth government should have deployed resources much earlier to what is a rolling series of terrorist incidents in our country. And to treat them as just an attack on a willful damage attack on a car, or as a graffiti event, it's not that. It's an attack on people because of their religious belief, because of their heritage. And I think the Prime Minister should provide what information he can publicly.
Mr Dutton, are you still backing mandatory sentences given the evidence from the AFP Commissioner is that they might be paid actors?
Very strongly, we are of the view, and absolutely we will implement laws which say for somebody who commits a terrorist attack that there is a mandatory sentence. And I want this to be a very clear message of deterrence to those, whether they're acting on someone else's behalf, whether they're somebody who has hatred and racism in their motivation. I want them to know that there is a penalty to pay in Australia, and we're not going to allow these people to go before the courts to get a slap on the wrist. We don't have tolerance for hatred in our country, not against the Jews, not against Catholics, not against Asians, not against Protestants, not against atheists, not against tall people, short people, nobody. And the fact that the Prime Minister has allowed this issue to fester, and why? For political advantage. That's the most shameful part here. The Prime Minister has allowed this issue to continue to fester, and it has escalated to the point where we see a childcare centre and a synagogue, a place of worship, firebombed, and the Prime Minister has essentially absented himself from this process. It's completely unacceptable. Yeah.
And yet Australia's Islamophobia register has seen more than 1,000 reports since October 7. Is that helpful to social cohesion?
Which part of the amendment are you talking about? No, in terms of the targeting toward a particular segment of society, of course we're not doing that. The people we have in our sights are criminals and terrorists. And somebody who commits an offence of terrorism on our soil should know that there's a price to pay. It doesn't matter whether it's against a synagogue or against a mosque or against a church. These are places of worship and they're sacrosanct. And you may disagree or agree with somebody's religious belief or have no religious belief at all. But in our country, you're able to practice that belief according to your own values. You're able to bring your children up in accordance with those values. And we respect that, providing people are acting within the law. So they're not targeted toward anybody except somebody who is willing and able and has committed a terrorist offence. And that's what the Prime Minister should stand for as well. But unfortunately, at a time when our country needs national leadership during a national crisis, the Prime Minister is completely out of his depth.